hello and welcome to the second official episode of the Skyline Sports Spotlight. That's the podcast I'm doing with Stephen Rissotto, who I'm bringing on the show today, who is the current producer for 95.7 The Game. You have covered the Giants for San Francisco, the SFA. You have obviously run your own podcast, the RizzoCast, for multiple years, covering people across baseball, across high school baseball, college, all the way to the major leagues. And you graduated at SF State. And you were actually the former editor-in-chief of the Skyline View and covered a lot of the baseball. I saw a couple stories.
Yep.
Skyline baseball. So you got a lot of sports knowledge and kind of sports coverage. And so it's thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. There's a lot going on all the time, so I'm glad that we could fit this in.
Awesome. That's great. So first thing I want to ask you is, obviously you're a sports journalist, right? You've covered sports exclusively mostly throughout your career. What really made you fall in love and kind of sparked your passion for this early on, going from high school to college and now?
That's a good question. I would just say the fascination with news. I know that's kind of what a lot of people say, but I was so fascinated with the way things broke, not just in sports, but also everywhere. Just the way people and writers especially got access to news and how they were able to break the news of a trade or break the news of a big free agent signing and go on TV and talk about it, go on the radio and talk about it and write a story about it. I thought, like, hey, I'm not going to make it to the big leagues. I played baseball in high school and stuff and coming up. And I was a PO, pitcher only, and I'm not going to make it to the big leagues that way, right? I threw 70 miles an hour. It wasn't going to happen. So the next best thing was to write, and I wanted to stay around sports somehow, and I liked writing. I enjoyed not just writing, but just reporting too. I think if you enjoy the reporting aspect of journalism more than the writing aspect of journalism, then I think there's going to be more success there, because a lot of it comes with talking to people, networking, getting information, gaining trust. And that to me is something that I enjoyed the most.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I'm sure, I'm sure a lot of reporters kind of fall in love with the game similarly, playing it growing up and kind of knowing the sport. So it's really cool to hear that, because I know, and we'll get into it later.
Getting humbled in the sport?
Yeah, his high school career, we'll get to it. We'll get to it for sure. Yeah, that too. But yeah, awesome, man. That's so good. That's so cool to hear that you kind of have that integrity about, also keeping close tabs on making sure that, when you talk to people, they can really trust you with, their voices. So that's great.
Everything's a conversation. Even an interview like this, it's all about like trying to make it sound like a conversation, and I think that's captivating.
Absolutely, yeah, and for sure, yeah, because I know questions, when you're asking questions, sometimes it can come off as like you're really trying to just get something out of them, but in reality, you're just trying to have a nice conversation with them.
This is a good conversation so far.
Yeah, it feels good. It feels great, right? So, obviously, you're a Skyline College alum, right? You went here, like I said, you have my position as editor-in-chief years past, but you graduated in 2020. So that was the year of, obviously, the pandemic and COVID and different things. What was it like navigating your path to sports journalism and just your path to what you want to do in your career and in your life at that time?
Yeah, it sucked. Like, I'm not even going to lie to you, it sucked big time. Just everything just kind of came to a halt, like a screeching halt. And I was in the middle of my senior year of high school, and like, you know this, like everybody talks about the final days of your senior year and the prom, and for me, the end of baseball, and I was editor-in-chief in high school, and everything was going well, and then all of that happens, and I think I probably clung on to just the feeling of displeasure probably too long, and I think everybody kind of goes through challenges, especially during that time, and my way of coping with it was starting the podcast and getting myself more involved just to stay active and to keep with the, what I wanted to do. And I'd been wanting to do one for a while, but now I had more time on my hands. And somebody said, Steven should do a podcast. One of my mom's friends said it. And my mom screenshotted that text and sent it to me, and then I ran with it. I'm like, she's right. Let's do this. So we, did it, and I think over 180 episodes later, here we are, and gave me a chance to get more, known on social media by posting clips, all that different stuff. So that was important for me to just stay busy during that time instead of just kind of be discouraged.
That's awesome. That's really cool to hear. And not only because, obviously you navigated through, but to hear the upbringing of, somebody that just said, hey, you should do a podcast.
Yep.
That's all it takes is a little push right there. And for sure, I'm sure it was definitely something that kept you active because I'm sure a lot of us feel that the pandemic, time flew by. It just
Crazy.
flew by, and you almost forget what some of the days look like because you were just at home. You were just trying to stay safe. You were trying to stay with your family, and so to find something productive to do with your time, like your podcast, it's an inspiring story to come out of the pandemic. So that's really cool.
And there are days where I was doing multiple a week, multiple a day, and now like things are a little bit busier, but it was just a cool time, fun time, and I got to meet a lot of great people doing it too.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm sure it starts slowing down and starts speeding up in different areas, so I totally get that. So you clearly love baseball, right? I think you've talked about it multiple times on your podcast. Your podcast is majority baseball. You covered the Giants. What really made you fall in love with the game from a young age, obviously going into high school and now into your career?
Just the poetic nature of it. Just the aspect that you don't have to be, and this is a cliche answer, but I'm going to say it anyways. You don't have to be the biggest player. You don't have to be the smallest player. You could be somewhere in between. You don't have to be super fast, super slow. Everybody kind of has a spot in baseball if they want it, right? It's a numbers game. I don't like math, but I like baseball math, and I like the long season. I like knowing that baseball's on every single night during the summer, and I could go home and things could have been bad during the day or good during the day, and I could come home knowing that there's a baseball game I could turn on and watch and listen to. And it helped that growing up a Giants fan, just they went on this crazy run, 3 and 5 years, and I remember all the playoff games where I was at during a lot of those moments. Tim Lincecum was my favorite player, still is my favorite player. Continues to be the dream podcast guest if he would ever do it. If I ever write a book, it would be a Lincecum book. So there's some tea there.
Right.
But yeah, I love baseball cards and all the baseball video games. Grew up playing MLB The Show, all that stuff. So it just kind of stood out from other sports. There's just a different symmetry, different poeticness to baseball that I enjoyed more than the other sports probably. And then playing it, I was kind of a late bloomer. I started playing in 3rd grade, so I didn't have like the baby T-ball stories. And just being a part of a team and competing, just something that I fell in love with.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's the crazy part about baseball, and like any other sport, you're going to see it on every single day, and that's really cool to hear that it kind of came late bloomer is a funny story, but you still fell in love with the game no matter how you performed. So that's really cool. And you did let's just be clear, really lucky era to grow up in with the Giants winning those 3.
Exactly.
I was still too young to even watch those, and we'll get to why I wouldn't appreciate them as much when I was in your shoes, but that's really cool to get to grow up and watch such a great team in your area.
Yeah, so they were really good. They were really good. They had guys who, like, if you look at the team on paper, maybe you wouldn't think that, but they just had these random guys step up every night at random times. A different guy every night. They had some star power, some good young pitching, so it was a good time to be a baseball fan.
Every year you guys won, it was a wild card. You guys were not the top of the division.
2014.
2014?
They won the division in 10 and 12.
Ah, see? Okay.
Yeah. And then wild card in 14 and 16, but they got bounced in the division series.
Yeah, because I forget the Dodgers have 13 years now, or almost 13 years.
Something like
that. 1 year they gap. So yeah, you got it was really cool, inspiring too, because again, to be even the wild card twice and win the World Series, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So you covered the Giants for the SFA, and I figured having heard all these stories probably was a pretty cool experience. What was it like for you covering them, and what was your role really entailing? Like, did you get to go on in the press boxes in different areas? Where were you primarily at?
Yeah, so I first started covering games in May of 2021 at the ballpark, and I would kind of work once a home series, so a few times a week. And then 2022, I was pretty much there all the time. 2023, all the time. 2024, 2025. So I'm going on, 4 years of having a season credential there, which has been great. And it's what I've always wanted to do. Yeah. And it wasn't a full-time thing. It was more of a part-time role at SF Bay, kind of beat writer type thing. And it was a glimpse of what it would look like full-time. And that's all I wanted, was a glimpse. And it was super cool. Got to be in the clubhouse before and after games, on the field during BP, getting interviews post-game. And I specifically liked kind of communicating and networking with the writers and the beat writers that I grew up reading, right? And Andrew Baggerly and Alex Pavlovich and Susan Slusser, all those people who I think are just the holy grail of baseball journalism in the Bay Area. I got to kind of be with in the press box and have conversations with and introduce myself, which was super cool. But I was not ready for it. I don't think any 19-year-old is ready to cover Major League Baseball. But as the years have kind of gone on, I've understood, what the day-to-day, what needs to be done at what time. My deadline was 10 minutes after the game ends. So just having a story ready by, the final out was important. I think I learned how to prioritize what was important in games. And I know journalism school, like, we're taught the inverted pyramid of like what's important. So instead of first inning, second inning, third inning, fourth inning, fifth inning, it was more huge moment and then some of the complementary moments that happened too. Huge performer, some of the complementary moments that happened as well. So it took a lot to get used to. I feel like I'm pretty well ingrained in it now, and it's something that I enjoy doing with 95.7 The Game. I haven't really skipped a beat since SFA, so it's pretty cool.
It's awesome. Yeah, and we're going to talk about a little later about who you brought onto your podcast, but just a lot of big names that you get to kind of talk to, not just, in the sport, but also reporters that, like you said, are kind of the people that inspire you to write the way you do. So your career covering there, what's a funny story? Because you've been there for a little bit now,
yeah.
Right? What's a funny or unique story that you have covering the Giants that kind of maybe is just a really cool story to share from your experience?
That's a good question. A really cool story to share. Well, my second day there, I was still new, very wide-eyed. I was afraid to talk to anybody. And I think the Giants were taking on the Cardinals. And usually in the press box, there are different placards for the different publications. And the bigger ones have a placard. The other ones, it's kind of just sit wherever you want. So the Chronicle has a placard, the Athletic, the Mercury News, they all have placards. SFA is a smaller publication. They did not have a placard. So I kind of, picked a seat that didn't have a placard. And I'll say the name for this part. Amy G, who a lot of people know as the Giants in-game reporter, she comes up behind me like right before her first pitch, and she goes, "You're in my seat. Like, I'm really sorry, but you're in my seat. Go sit somewhere else." Man. I'm like, whoa. And this is somebody I grew up watching, Amy G.
Yeah.
And I'm like, first of all, I looked back and I was like, whoa. So, I moved, I went directly below her, and then like the third inning rolls around and I look behind me and like she's gone, all of her stuff. So I'm like, you kicked me out of the seat just for like to sit there for 2 innings. So that's a story that I always tell people. I was also there for some pretty like crazy moments, like Patrick Bailey's walk-off inside the park homer. That's a moment that sticks out. Alex Cobb almost threw a no-hitter a few years ago. He came 1 out shy. And that's on my bucket list, probably yours too, to cover a no-hitter.
Yeah.
And just figuring out how I was going to handle that. And I had a story ready for if he did throw one. I had a story ready for if it did get broken up. So all of that, some big moments when the Giants won the division in 2021. I was there for that. This big moment, incredible season. Just a bunch of things happened. I don't know of any other particular moment. I could tell you here's somebody that I met. So I'm once you get to do this for a while, it kind of becomes second nature on the people that you see around the field, right? Like my first year, I was in a clubhouse with Brandon Belt, Brandon Crawford, Buster Posey, and we talked about those championship years. Like those are the guys from those years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then as I wasn't really once you see them a few times and you're in a scrum with them, holding up your phone, like it kind of wears off a little bit and you realize they're just people. But the only time, and you're not allowed to ask for pictures with any of the players. That's a hard no, you'd get kicked out in a heartbeat. This was not a player, this was another media member. I was in the dugout, I turned behind me and I saw Ken Rosenthal, who's the reporter on Fox, writes for The Athletic, one of the best baseball writers there is. And when you see Ken Rosenthal, it's like a wax museum, in my mind at least.
Yeah.
Grew up reading this guy. So he's someone that I specifically asked for a picture with. Didn't break any of the rules. He's media. It was fine. So I took a picture with him, and that was pretty cool.
That's really cool. Yeah, because I mean, he's still active today. I grew up, watching him always on with the suit and tie.
Yep, the bow tie.
Yep, the bow tie was always there. So that's really cool. Yeah, and again, that's a cool way to not break any rules and get a nice photo.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
I would not take a photo with any of the players. Like Justin Verlander's was a Giant this past season, and he was on the cover of like magazines that I have still, and MLB 2K12, and and here he is, Hall of Famer, Inner Circle Hall of Famer, and it was just like he's another guy. So you kind of get used to it pretty quickly.
That's really cool. Yeah, and I'm sure that that's probably one of the biggest things that you're learning as you go along is that all those reporters eventually get to know them at a personal level, that you stop looking at them like, television stars and more like people that you have to have conversations with, and cover seriously. So that's cool to hear. Let's talk about your podcast, the RizzoCast, right? You've done it for, I think, is it 5 years now?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Right? And so for people that don't know too much about the podcast, I'll just give a little introduction about people that you have talked to. You interviewed Joe Madden, who was the Cubs manager for multiple years and won a championship with them. Marco Estrada, who was a player for the Blue Jays. I remember him on the freaking video game.
Great changeup.
Yep, great changeup, was a superstar there. Alana Rizzo, who covered the Dodgers for multiple years as a broadcast reporter and is still actively covering sports, in baseball to this day. And Tyler Glasnow, who is my favorite of the people you've talked to. And we'll get to why it's my favorite later, but those are just some, again, people you used to see on television. You now have had conversations with, not only in areas where you're forced to, but where you ask them to come on your podcast. So what is it like speaking to those people, and what was it like kind of getting that opportunity in your podcast for the first time? Because I know you talked to them at recovering them and out and about, but to get them on your podcast, what was that like for you?
It's really cool, and I think just a matter of being prepared. Like, I could tell you're prepared for this, which is great, and being prepared is the most important thing, because I can't go into these interviews without any question that's different from what they've answered before, right? It has to be, like I said, a conversation. So that was the cool part, is just having a conversation and networking and getting the chance to ask questions, not just that I know the answers of, but I'm curious about. And these are people that are really good at their jobs. They're the best in the world at their jobs. And I want to know why. How did they get there? I'm curious person. And the podcast has evolved. I didn't think I would ever get guests like that. I kind of pride myself, I've had some big guests on, but I like the fact that my show also has a lot of random major leaguers on. I don't know if you collected baseball cards, but there would always be like a Marco Estrada card, like in every pack. There's just, and he's not like a huge name, but he was.
But you remember him, they're big names that that had multiple years in their careers, and they're nothing to take lightly for sure.
You remember them. And just guys that even got a cup of coffee in the major leagues. I like having those guys because they have the best stories. Like, everybody's interviewed Mike Trout, Clayton Kershaw, Glasnow to an extent, but not a lot of people have interviewed, the third string catcher on a World Series team, right? Yep. And they have stories. They weren't there for long, so they're going to remember it more, right? So that was something I realized. And also for the bigger guests, there's always that feeling, and I deal with it now in radio, you have more access to some of these people. But when you don't have access to them, it's almost like you have to shoot your shot, right? Because you never know unless you try.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a quick backstory with Glasnow. My high school pitching coach came up with him through the Pittsburgh Pirates organization. Wow. And they were great friends. They pitched in the rotation together in Double-A Altoona or whatever it was. It was them, and Jameson Taillon was coming up. Josh Bell was coming up through the Pirates system at that time. And they're still good friends. And my coach was like, "Do you want to have Tyler on?" I was like, "Absolutely." So we set it up. It was after the Rays played the Dodgers in the World Series in 2020. It was in January. We talked about the World Series, and he was good enough to come on. But Joe Madden, I actually got a random email in my inbox from somebody who was promoting his book.
That book I know. And that book, I'll tell you, I know why I know it is because here at Skyline College, they emphasize that his book and a couple other books that have his name in it on his ideology of coaching. So that's
cool. The Book of Joe. Yeah. So they did, and I've always wanted to do this. They sent me an advanced copy. I read the PDF on my laptop during class at San Francisco State, and then I scheduled a podcast with him. And I didn't know if it was for real until he popped up on my Zoom screen. And I was like, okay, that's him. Good, we're good.
Yeah.
So, and in the waiting room with the Zoom, it said iPad 1. And I was like, this better be him.
Yeah.
So I know that was a long-winded answer, but you never know unless you try. Like, there's ways to track down retired players, publicists, PR people that are associated with teams, public relations. You could find emails every now and then. There's different ways of doing it, but you never know unless you try. So that's what I found out.
That's awesome. Yeah, and again, I watched, and that was the person you mentioned at the beginning, and you were saying Tyler Glasnow, talking about how you knew him and different things like that. So that's really cool that he's the one who got you.
And he remembered me when the Dodgers came he was still a Ray. This was 2020. This was before he was traded. So this was last year, actually. He pitched for the Rays in a game in San Francisco. And I was there as a fan. I wasn't working that night. I was there with a buddy of mine. Right. And then I know, based on pitching schedules, that he was supposed to throw a flat ground 2 days after. So I covered the day game on that Wednesday, and I stood by the Rays dugout as he was throwing his flat ground. So when he walks by, he has to walk by me.
Yeah.
So I said, Tyler, Steven Rissotto with RizzoCast. He's like, what's up, man? It's been a few years. And he remembered, because he actually still, this is kind of just a name drop here. He still follows the page, which is a little bit of a shameless plug. So I'm sure he sees some of the clips that I post. And I post, every now and then I'll post archival clips. That's what I've been doing on my social page. But he still remembered. So if you do a good enough interview, people will still remember, I guess.
There you go. Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'll say a couple years later, small little interview turns into, he still knows your name, man.
Yep.
That's awesome. What first brought you to kind of continue this once you started it? Obviously, we talked about your upbringing and you had it really, just short idea that you came up with. But when did you know you could keep this going and really take it seriously?
Great question. Like, really good question. Because this is the hardest part. Because it's easy to start one, but it's even harder to keep going with one. And that's kind of what they say in sports, right? It's easy to get to the big leagues, but it's hard to stay. Yeah. And for me, it just took a lot of first of all, I liked it. And my thing was, if I'm not going to do it, like, why would I not do it if I like it? Yeah. And the first thing I said to myself was, I'm not going to look at any of the analytics. The podcast doesn't do as well on YouTube than it does with people downloading it on Spotify, Apple, everything else it's on. But I told myself I'm not going to look at any of that. If I like doing it, I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to, look at how many people watch it or listen to it. I'm just going to keep going. And the way I'm going to try and get people on is say it's maybe a little bit bigger than what it is. And that kind of fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
So part of it is just you have to like it. Because if you don't like it, you're just going to run yourself into the ground and be stuck with something you don't like, which is not good. But I liked it. And it got to the point where every day I was contacting someone and I was scheduling someone. And I got into a groove. And I hope to get back into that groove soon. Yeah. And that's just kind of how it happened. You just have to keep pumping out content. And that's for any, writer, reporter, podcaster. To get good at it, you just kind of have to keep going. And my first episode is a lot different than my recent episode. There's a lot better conversation. There's a lot more confidence on my part. There's a lot better quality. Yeah. I think I was in the dark for my first episode. So a lot more better equipment, right? Better Wi-Fi. So things change over time, and it should be different from the first to the last. That means you got better. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, I love the intro where it's Steven Rissotto and you got the Giants thing, the stadium and the music. It's so much different than your first episode.
The voice in the intro is the former public address announcer in the ballpark for the Giants, Renell Brooks-Moon.
Really?
Who I had on the podcast. She recently got fired by the Giants, I think, before last season, which bring back Renell. That was unjust. Everybody agrees with me on that one. And after the podcast, I said, hey, can you announce my name? Because I heard her all my childhood. Now batting for the Giants, number 28. Yeah. Busted. Now hosting the RizzoCast, Steven Rissotto. And it was crazy. Full circle.
That's awesome. And I was going to say, I felt like that name was that the person who did that was not just, I feel like you did it for a reason. And that's really cool to hear. Yep. There you go. What did you enjoy most about your podcast? I know you've talked about a lot about what you enjoyed and how you really, you wouldn't keep going if you didn't really like it. But what do you feel like has been the most gratifying for you? Because you've said the stars are a big deal, but you've also talked to some lower name people that you feel are just as important. So what do you feel like you're most proud of?
Just continuing with it, to be honest. I kind of talked about it in the last question, but continuing with it and also just making it my own and not getting stuck in my head about different things and not changing the way I do things. Like I want to be able to have the Tyler Glass now on, and then the next episode have Ike Shahada from Ike Sandwiches on, right?
Yeah.
Or a high school coach on, and like, you know, there's you're never like too big for anybody, to be honest. And that's one thing that I wanted to get my head, you know, wrapped around is I want to have on anybody that I want, you know, not change based on who I've had on before. So I would say that's my favorite part of it. The preparation's a lot of fun. I don't know how much fun you had preparing for this, but I like going on Baseball Reference, finding outliers, like you got hit by a pitch 19 times in this, like finding stuff that people normally wouldn't ask, I think is probably the biggest key. And then like just having fun and laughing and, you know, having the person and also myself. I like showing personality in a podcast, and I like having other people show personality in a podcast too.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, again, comparison to going to school and doing, you know, your basic classes, you know, when you find time to do stuff like this, it's fun. You know, it's fun to do the research. So it's just always about finding time. You are now the producer of 95.7 The Game. And the main thing I want to ask you about that is, what is your role as a producer? When I hear that role, I obviously don't think, you know, the same as like hosting it, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you do exactly behind the scenes or just as a producer there?
Yeah, so 95.7 The Game is a station in San Francisco. I am one of the many producers. We have a bunch of producers. And we are a sports station and sports talk radio. And there's two sports talk radios. There's us. There's KMBR. There's our biggest rivals, KMBR. We are the Warriors flagship station. So we have the rights to their games. So we're kind of Warrior-centric, Niners, Giants. We cover it all. But we're also the flagship for the Valkyries as well. They're new in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Part of my role is I do a bunch of different things. I go to games. I cover games. For us, I get sound, social media stuff. Sometimes I'll write. And that's going to Giants games, Valkyries games, Niners, Warriors, kind of all of it. And then most of the time I'm in the studio. So I'm not hosting, but we do have hosts who are great. They're veteran sportscasters. And my job is to sit behind the glass and make sure everything runs smoothly, right? So sometimes I'll be at the board and I'll be clicking buttons, making sure we go to commercial break on time, screening the calls for people that want to call in, playing sound, all that fun stuff. That's pretty much what I do. I love it. I've loved every second. I just celebrated my year anniversary, my work anniversary.
Nice.
A few days ago. Thank you. Appreciate that. It's been really fun. There's a community there of just people who really enjoy sports in general and enjoy the art of sportscasting in general, and it's been a lot of fun.
Nice. Yeah, and I figured that's, you know, that is a very big role, you know, to make sure everything goes smoothly. Those calls, you know, screening in.
Everything's live.
Yeah, everything's live right there. So, you know, getting to hear those people on the radio and different things, you're the one who really, you know, gets all the behind the scenes that makes it happen. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and if someone cusses, there's a button to click because we are regulated by the FCC. So you can't say certain words. Right. And when someone cusses, like a caller calls on and cusses, we have to click the button and it will put us on delay. So...
Gotcha. Yeah. Wow. Okay. And that's.
Yeah.
I always wondered how that works.
It's happened a few times to me where somebody's come on and cussed. So it's called the dub button. So.
Got it. Okay. Dub button. All right. Yeah. So you got to be a little active sometimes on the.
You got to listen.
You got to really listen. Yeah. All right. There you go. So out of all the things you've done, we just talked about, you know, your podcast and how you cover for the SFA, and now you're 95.7 The Game's producer. What do you feel like, and it might be a tough question, what do you feel like you've enjoyed the most, or what do you think has been the most exciting for you?
I would say walking up to a big league press box. I have a picture of me actually as a kid because I have an uncle that's a sports writer or was a sports writer in Kansas City for a long time. And he covered the Royals and the Chiefs. And he's been kind of an inspiration on my career a lot. So when I was in third grade, I wanted to also be a writer. And when I first got a chance to cover my first game, in 2021, walking up to an area where I wanted to be as a kid was just surreal. And just the fact that was able to happen, something I've always wanted to do just to make it happen, was probably the most meaningful to me. I have a picture of me as a kid pointing to the press box, and I kind of recreated that picture, and like I sent it to my mom. I'm like, here I am. I'm here. I'm like, this is what I said I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Just really cool, and it never gets tiring.
But let's bring it back. So and we'll show this in post. I have a photo of you, and I just want to see if you would know when this was taken. This is from Max Preps.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and so it looks like you're on the younger side, but do you know when this could have been taken?
Yeah, so based on the uniforms, I have a few things to break down about this. Based on the uniforms, this was my sophomore year.
Got it.
And my sophomore year, I had my JV. We were on JV. And these uniforms were actually not bad, even though the yellow is kind of weird.
No, yeah.
And it's funny, if you zoom in closely, I have the goggles. I have the sports goggles, which I wore my first 2 years before I kind of upgraded. Fun fact about me is I can't see anything. I'm so blind.
Wow.
I don't even know. I don't have any like contacts in right now. My sunglasses are prescription. I have prescription glasses. I can't see without them. I'm so blind. So those were kind of what I had, and it made me look like I was in Little League throughout my first 2 years of high school.
Yeah, you said look a little on the younger side for sure.
And that's me on the mound. I have my glove up. I always like to cover my nose for whatever reason. And the funny thing about this picture is that the field still had grass.
Right.
And the field at Reardon now is turf.
Mm-hmm.
And it underwent a renovation my senior year, and we only got to play on the turf like twice. So
right.
Also, my funny thing about my junior year is that our two coaches would always kind of like get into it with each other. So we had one coach who was an old school guy in his 70s, old school baseball. Then we had another guy who was more like modern day.
Yeah.
And like they always bumped heads a little bit in front of the players. And we only had 13 guys on the team. So I was playing all the time. It was exhausting. So it was cool, but it was exhausting. So that is definitely a blast from the past for sure.
Cool. Yeah, and again, Max Preps got me on that one. You can hold on. I can get it back from you. Hold on to it. Whatever. Yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up because I thought it was cool. And again, you're right. That field is no longer. It's all turf. It's all pretty now.
It's all turf, man.
Yeah. So that's crazy. All right. And so, what did you enjoy most about high school baseball? Before we move on from that, I know you talked about it. And you obviously missed your senior year, which is a big year. But from your time, it sounded like you had a ton of fun.
Oh yeah.
And what was your what did you enjoy most about it?
Loved every second. I loved going to practice after school. Loved the games, loved the bus rides, loved the people. And those guys, I talk to them sometimes more than I even talk to my college friends. Like, they are some of my best friends. And we had the best times, like, for sure. It's also one of those life things, for sure. And I'm sure you can attest to this. Just being on a team, I think something about being on a team in high school specifically, you learn a lot about being an individual and having respect for not just baseball, but just your studies, time management. I learned so much from all my coaches, and one coach, Brandon Ramsey, the head coach, who's no longer there, but had him on my podcast actually. But he, so much life lessons, integrity, and putting in the work when no one's watching, teamwork, just be humble, act like you've been there before, all that fun stuff, but also have fun. You only play high school baseball one time, and I think that's one thing that I really felt like I understood, and I knew in high school that was probably going to be the level I was going to stop at, and I just felt like I enjoyed every second of it, and I would go back and do it again in a heartbeat.
That's awesome. And it's really cool to hear your kind of perspective to say you thought about, hey, you only get to do this once.
Yep.
I think a lot of time when you're a kid, you don't think that way.
Nope.
And you kind of just flies by and you think you're just keep playing forever. And so that's awesome to hear that you really got to enjoy it that way.
Yeah. No, you never, especially when I mentioned self-awareness. I played with people that were not self-aware, and they thought that they were going to be the third starter for the Toronto Blue Jays in the year 2027. So, you have to know your role in every aspect of the imagination. I mentioned PO. I knew I was a PO. I played with guys that knew that they weren't going to play every day. And it's the same thing when you get into a professional landscape, is that you have to understand your role. You understand your role as editor-in-chief of this paper. Reporters understand their role as reporters, and good things come of it when you do, when you exceed expectations in your specific role. So
that's awesome. And so the second photo I have for you today I want to know if you remember this logo. And this is related to the Skyline View. Do you remember this logo? Yeah. And we'll put this in post as well.
Yeah, the TSV Sports Show. I have great memories of the TSV Sports Show. So I was part of like kind of two renditions of it. So my first semester on staff was fall 2020, and the sports editor's name was Daniel Archuleta, who I still kind of communicate with. He's at SF State now, still reporting. And this logo is hilarious because it's such a simple logo. Like we have the bridge, and then just balls.
Yep, that's
weird,
no, it's not. But I mean, that's what it is.
That's what it is.
You know, and that's the funniest thing about it.
It popped up and then went away. Every episode, we just talked sports. Everybody on that show kind of had their niche. So it was myself. I kind of talked baseball. There's a guy, Jasper Lindsay. He talked football. Armand Archignani, who's still a good friend of mine, was on that show too. He talked some basketball and football. We had a guy, Marco Milani, who talked about hockey. So we like had people that would cover everything. And then the other rendition, Daniel left, and then Jasper took over as the host, and we kept doing it. And like we would just come together and just nothing was prepared, and we would just talk, you know. And it's kind of the setup of how things are popular now with sports talk. Just, you know, I'm not a big fan of their model, but Barstool, just like they have the setup of just people talking, and they've kind of made it popular.
Yeah.
Again, not a fan of them. Do not condone them or anything. But John Boy Media, same thing. Just people talking. So we kind of did that before they become popular, I think. So that's pretty cool. It does bring back a lot of memories, I think. The CSV Sports Show.
That's awesome because I know that I watched a couple episodes and you're always there. You know, you're always around, but you're not hosting. So I'm like, I wanted to know how much, you know, you remember that. Yeah. So that's awesome.
I have a story about the team. For those that are involved that are watching this that might know the story, I'll tell you off camera, but it is one of my favorite all-time stories at the Skyline View. But that's a tease, unfortunately, that people can't. I would get in trouble if I said it.
All right, I'm sure the people that are, you know, if they watch this, they'll know exactly what you're talking about.
That was a good blast from the past.
Great. And so I guess the final question I'll ask you, and we're finally at the end now of this great conversation. For a young reporter who wants to be specifically in sports journalism, right? What do you feel like is the best advice you could give them? Whether it's baseball, hockey, soccer, basketball, when you're trying to start in a very competitive field, what do you feel like is the best advice when you first start out?
Start a blog. Like 100% start a blog. And in the blog, do some interviews, do some podcasts. Substack is probably my go-to. Like I have a Substack that I write on sometimes. I would suggest a Substack. And the biggest thing I could say to someone is just don't stop writing. Any thought that comes to mind, if there's a high school game down the street, your high school, go write a story, interview some of the players, coach, and just write, report, and podcast. Start a TikTok, record yourself reacting to a moment that happened in the game, and pretty soon you're going to generate enough clips to be able to use when you apply for jobs, right? And then picking a college that can facilitate these needs, I guess, help with giving you the best opportunity to succeed. That's important. For me, SF State, the newspaper was, you know, I got to a position where I was an editor and I could kind of pick the stories that I wanted. And some of them were baseball related, which was great. Some of them were not. Just kind of make your portfolio as vast and as verified as possible, varied as possible, I should say. So that was important. Just finding opportunities or finding platforms that could give you the best opportunity. And social media is important too. I mentioned TikTok, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram. Just post all your stories. It feels so weird to self-promote, Antonio, but like you're gonna have to do it. You're gonna have to put yourself out there. And eventually it's not about, like I said this in there, it's not about like who you know, because like, you know, you always hear about people that get a job because they know people, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of the equation just a little bit. And we talked about, you know, getting called up to the big leagues and staying there.
Yeah.
You could get that job that somebody else helped you get, but it's another thing in staying there.
Yep.
Because then you're going to get exposed as a fraud if you get a job as a journalist and you're not even a good writer.
Yeah.
You still have to eventually write without that person, right?
Yep.
So it's more about who knows you. And that's super important in its own is you have to get your name out there. Every single byline matters. You can't take a story off. And what I would suggest to young journalists is maybe you're not going to get the chance like I did to cover like Giants right off the bat, but you have a chance at building yourself up with high school, college. Reach out to as many people. Nobody's too big to interview. So that's probably what I would say to those young, aspiring next-gen sports media people.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, you're talking to one right now, so I really appreciate you coming on. And again, I'm sure a lot of sports journalists could really learn from you because you've done, again, starting your own podcast in very humble beginnings. So it's really cool to hear your story. And thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to come talk to me.
Absolutely, it was a blast. Appreciate it, and you did a great job. And I told you I prepared by watching the last one with Achilles Woodson, which go watch that one.
Thank you.
Did a really good job. Could tell that you prepared very well. You had me speechless with the JV picture of me. But you did a really good job, and anything you need, man, just let me know.
All right, appreciate it. Well, that's all for this episode of the Skyline Sports Spotlight. Subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to your podcast, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.